Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Winterbottom of GMDC, speaking to you today from GMDC's offices here in Colorado Springs. I want to welcome everybody joining us today to the video cast. It's actually our 14th such video cast in the GMDC Connect videocast series. Today's videocast is entitled A 2013 Gender Perspective. Times have changed. Have shopping habits followed? You know, it's really been a long-held assumption in our industry that the most appropriate focus for retailers, suppliers, and manufacturers is the female shopper. But with the changing roles within the typical American household today, the time is really right to take another look at that notion, whether or not those changing roles have translated into altered household shopping routines. And this is exactly the focus of a recent study by Nielsen. And we're lucky today to have with us two speakers from Nielsen to share their findings from that study. If you're not familiar with today's speakers, you're in for a real treat. Not only are they great people, they're really good at what they do. Joining us today from Cincinnati, Ohio, is Mr. Todd Hale, Nielsen's Senior Vice President of Consumer and Shopper Insights. And also joining us from Madison, Wisconsin, is Liz Cress, and she is the Analyst Professional Services with Nielsen. Before I hand things off to them, I did want to remind the audience that at the end of today's session, Todd and Liz will be having a Q&A session. And at the bottom of the window, just below the window in which you're watching this broadcast, there's a chat window. If you have any questions for Todd or Liz to ask at the end, type them into that chat window. We'll be monitoring that and then teeing them up afterwards to give to Todd and to Liz. So with that, please allow me to introduce Mr. Todd Hale, Senior Vice President, Consumer and Shopper Insights with Nielsen. Welcome, Todd.
Thanks, Mike, and good morning, good afternoon to all. You know, there has been a lot of discussion over the last several years about the role that men are playing in shopping and buying behavior and their involvement in basic cleaning and household chores. But truth be told, that research started a few years ago and was research that was sponsored by, guess who? ESPN. And guess who wants who ESPN is trying to reach out to. So we're going to show you that men are getting more engaged in shopping, and in some categories they're very engaged in shopping, but still women play a very important role. And some work that I think Liz is going to talk about that brought about some pretty interesting light on some specifics around gender specific marketing is what we're going to be looking at as well. So let's take a look at our agenda. So we're going to start off with a sort of a macro view of differences between men and women, talk about differences in shopping behavior across age groups, talk about retail channel shopping behavior, explore differences in category buying behavior, and again, share some of those examples of how you put gender-specific marketing into action. And then we'll wrap it up with a few summary takeaways before we turn it over to Q&A. So we're going to start off with this macro view, and that is, what are the difference between men and women? And Liz, let's have you take it over, please.
All right, thanks, Todd. So this first slide we're going to look at is just some overall census data about women reaching higher. And what that means is more women are attending college than before. And also, so women make up 52% of the population, but 53% of those in college are females. 52% of people in the management and professional related occupations are females. Males make up a higher percentage of the labor force, but actually also a higher percent of the unemployed labor, or the unemployed group. So this is just to show that you know, women are reaching higher than they used to, and it's something to keep in mind. And it kind of leads to our what we want to talk about, and that's men shopping more. So here we have just some basic shopping behavior information between men and women. So women have always driven trips and spending. We know that. And they still make up 64% of trips. They spend about $50 per trip, whereas males spend about $42 per trip. So we can see that women drive this. They still do. However, as Todd mentioned, what we want to talk about is that men are shopping more these days. So let's get a little bit into that.
So men are doing more of the grocery shopping, and some other research done outside of Nielsen, we find that 47% of men do more than half of their family's shopping and meal preparation. Almost 2/3 of males are making a shopping list. So important as you connect with males to make sure that if you're a brand, how you get on their list. 40% of males are browsing the store to look for unadvertised specials. They still aren't the primary shopper in most occasions, but it's interesting, and we're going to show some stats on how they are engaged in the Food Network. Particularly true for millennials too, are spending a lot of time working, watching cooking shows, and certainly with the influx of male chefs on the network, it's given men a permission to cook. And also some interesting trends when you look at the top 10 interests for men and how it's changed since 2004. And just the one that pops that's most interesting is the fact that back in 2004, food and cooking was ranked number 12. It popped up to number 7. So interesting to see that men are engaged around the house in cooking. Myself, I'm the primary cook when I'm home. I'm the primary shopper when I'm home. The wife is getting better at cooking. We've only been married 35 years. She's had plenty of practice, but still, she needs a little bit more. And also, an interesting phenomenon when you think about dads are now dads and moms. As Liz pointed out, women are reaching out. And in some households, women are the primary breadwinner. And therefore, you've got more instances where men are taking more responsibility, either managing the house or staying at home more often. So whether it's parenting of kids and some engagements that you see around parenting.com, it's some interesting ways that now we're including the male in the household more and more around a lot more aspects of the household formulation than we ever had in the past.
So another difference we see here between men and women, just at an overall level, is that women are more deal prone than men. So, at a coupon level, trade level, and just overall taking advantage of deals, women are more likely to do so. And a reason this may be is because men are more likely to be just on a mission. They want to get in and out, get what they need. And they're willing to pay higher prices to just complete that goal. So they're not going to shop around like a female might, who has, a long list and is looking for deals and spending more time in the aisle.
But it is interesting to see how men are engaged in technology, and this is more so even inside the store, where we find that males are more likely to research items and look for deals online while shopping in the store. So technology is an important way that we can think about how we connect with males inside the store.
So even though males are more likely to be using their mobile devices inside of the actual store, women and men are actually equally likely to be using their mobile cell phone or tablet from their house to purchase goods. So that means, replacing that brick and mortar shopping trip with just that of, sitting on your couch and buying something through your mobile device. And again, so that's women and female are doing that equally now, whereas it used to be that men were more likely to do so. So next, let's see if there's any differences between age groups. So here we can see that the main similarity between males and females is that about 1/4 of their spending is made up of ages 45 to 54. And this is probably due to those being the key, child rearing years where you're paying for a whole family. However, we do see some slight differences when it comes to millennials. So female millennials are spending more and making up more of their total female dollars than that of males. And one reason this might be is a bit of research that showed us that male millennials are actually more likely to live at home after college or live at home after high school and financially rely on their parents. So it may be that females are getting out there in the world earlier, around age 36 or below, and spending more.
And interesting, when I think about as a child watching Archie Bunker on television, did Archie Bunker ever go out and make shopping trips? Interesting thing is when you look over time, as men age, guess what? They get more engaged in shopping. They make more trips. they still don't spend as much as females do on shopping, but that gap narrows. So, whether it's in a case where, the dad, it's time to get out of the house and take a little break from the household, whatever the case might be, males as they're aging are getting more engaged. So we talked earlier about, leveraging technology, particularly among younger males, maybe in terms of how to reach out to them. May not be the right thing to do with an older male, and some it might. But interesting ways to use different age groups to think about how we connect with shoppers, both male or female.
And then the last thing we looked at across age groups was if the use of deals changed at any point in time. So we see that among all age groups, women do take advantage of deals more often than males. However, there is a little bit of difference for males when it comes to age 45 to 54, where males have a spike in how much they're taking advantage of deals. And again, this might be due to the fact that they are buying for their kids, so they're more conscious of their spending. They're going to look for deals. They're not just going to not care about prices. But as far as females go, they're pretty consistent across the board in terms of about 33% of them taking advantage of deals.
So men make fewer trips in total than females do, but how does it vary by retail channel? And we've been tracking this for some time, since 2004. Interesting thing, across all retail channels, primary retail channels that handle consumer packaged goods categories, with the exception of convenience stores, females dominate the shopping trips in all other retail channels. But male share has been increasing over time. Within grocery markets, it's jumped up a point from 37 to 38%. In club, it's gone from 37% to 40% of shoppers. And there you see what's happening in convenience stores, where we men know how to buy beer, beef jerky, ice, and tobacco like nobody else can. But clearly, some big differences in terms of that channel relative to the dominance that females have in other channels.
And same thing with spending per trip. So how much dollars are you spending? How many dollars are in your basket? So we see across channels that females do make larger trips no matter what the channel. And this is probably an indication of females making larger planned trips. So they may have that long shopping list for their family, and they go in and they're making big stock up trips, as opposed to a male, which is probably making a slightly smaller trip. The other interesting thing here is that actually some of these channels are not quite as different as you would think. For example, in drug, males spend $25 per trip and females only spend $3 more per trip than that. So that's actually an interesting change we've seen over the years, that males are spending more in drug, in dollar, and in club.
Yeah, Liz, the club numbers, I'm a pretty avid Costco shopper on at least every other week. I'm just surprised how close those numbers are, but I know how they get me to buy stuff I really didn't want to buy. But I think there's an opportunity for other retailers leveraging work that they might do with brands and manufacturers to think about how do we drive a little bit more impulse buying, and are men a good avenue to take that route. And again, we talked earlier about the importance of C-stores, and that's a place to win with men. Again, a disproportionate share compared to any other retail channel, 57% of the trips made by males to that channel. And if you look at the top selling categories in that category, we're going to talk a little bit later in the presentation about, and not much later, but about how men versus women differ in terms of how big of a share they account for certain categories. And we're going to show you that beverages are a big part of what males buy. And when you look at the top selling list of categories in C-stores, beverages have always been a key component of what sells there. So also have the opportunity to look at differences in terms of day of week shopping behavior across gender. And, very similar shopping patterns across day of week when you look at differences between men and women. Weekends, Sunday, Saturday, obviously, are the biggest days in terms of where we find the most shopping trips. And then Friday, a little bit above average compared to what we see Monday through Thursday, but basically no difference between men and women on that perspective. And then when we look at differences by age on day of week, we do see that younger males are a little bit more engaged on the weekend. So again, maybe think about how you connect with male shoppers on the weekend with displays, with advertising, with some mobile devices to reach out to them to talk about what you have for them that they can shop and buy on a weekend relative to weekday.
All right, so we talked about where they shop, which channels. We talked about when they shop, what days of week, but now we're going to get a little bit more into detail about what categories they're buying. So this first slide is about female non-food categories. And as the title says, beauty and baby, women do the buying. So a lot of these items are, so we can see that for all categories, females make up 68% of dollar spend and males make up 32%. So we wanted to see which items were skewed towards females more. And in terms of non-food, that's cosmetics, grooming, baby needs, skincare, hair care, a lot of things that you would actually expect. And the reason those are dominated by females is that they have higher penetration among females. So more people are buying, more females are buying, but they're also buying more frequently. They're making a lot more trips than guys on these categories. There are a few cases where men are actually spending more per trip, but that's not affecting the overall category spend.
And just to be clear, how we calculated this is a share of spending when the female or the male is the primary shopper on a given shopping trip. So that's how we made these share calculations. And when you look at the categories where we see the biggest share differential in favor of men versus women, tend to be in a lot of categories that are less personal in nature. So motor vehicle oil, lawn and garden, computer electronic supplies, film and camera, light bulbs. So, and interesting though, when it's not because of more men are out there shopping relative to women, actually fewer of them tend to buy these categories than women do. But it's a difference driven by differences in frequency and also differences in how much men are spending per trip when they are engaged in these categories.
All right, so when we get into the food categories, rather than that general merchandise, we see that females are driving, or females dominate among basic foods. So females are big on, baby food, baking mixes, flour, baking supplies, meal starters, dough. So a lot of baking and cooking ingredients that are basic needs. And again, similar to the female non-food categories, these are driven by more females are buying it than males, so high penetration, and they're buying it more often.
And then when you look where males play a big role in food categories, they tend to be very skewed to beverage. Can you believe it? A disproportionate number of men buying liquor and beer and wine than their female counterparts. But nevertheless, don't be thinking that women aren't engaged. It's men are making more frequent trips to buy those categories, but actually there are more women out shopping buying those categories than men. But then juices and drinks, refrigerated, carbonated beverages, and then some snacking items like nuts and ice cream, prepared foods ready to serve. So it's sort of a quick fix in the microwave, since not all men have those great cooking skills that their female counterpart might have. But again, you can look at differences in terms of, is it driven by penetration, frequency, or spend, and by and large, it's still women that are out there making more trips.
Yep, so we looked at the differences in share of category spend, but it's interesting here when we look at those items that are purchased the most frequently among females and among males, a lot of them are very similar. So they're the basics. They're bread, milk, produce, snacks, cheese, all in the top 10 for males and females in terms of purchasing them most frequently. So that's an interesting thing, but it's important to note that even though, bread is the most commonly purchased category for both males and females, females still make 7 more trips per year to buy bread, and they still make 7 more trips per year to buy milk. So women still are dominating, but similar categories there. And then we see kind of the same story for those items that are purchased on deal. So no real difference between those that females take advantage on deal and males. So when ice cream's on sale, females and males are both going to buy it. And again, though, for ice cream, let's say 52% of women's dollars are spent on deal and only 44% of males. So even though they're both taking advantage of that deal, women are doing more so of it.
And we also see an equal attraction between brands and private label. So about 80% of females' dollar sales goes to private label, the same basic number for males. But then when you look at the importance overall of how much of private label sales go to females versus branded go to females, it's the same figure, the 68-32 split. So again, men are getting more important, but women dominate. But obviously, some interesting ways to play and to figure out how you play in the space, depending on who you are as a brand, who you are as a retailer, and how you want to attract those sales. And so we've also seen some other research that it's not just about who's making the purchase, but it's also about who's involved in the decision. So some research that would suggest that men are getting more engaged in a shared decision around what are the brands that are going to be purchased, and not just for traditional male-oriented categories, but for categories like cleaning products, even child and baby-related care items. So again, males are playing a more increasing role over time. So I want to now turn few slides over to Liz to talk about putting gender-specific marketing in action. I think here's some great examples that Liz has come up with that really point to how marketers have done a pretty good job of creating an atmosphere to attract either males or females or both. And we're going to do this by looking at basically three types of brands in the world: those that are gender-specific brands, those brands that are trying to be cross-gender, and those brands that are gender neutral. So Liz, what have you learned?
I've learned a lot. So first of all, we're going to look at gender-specific brands and just a few examples. There's a lot out there. This is one of the more common avenues. It's basically taking from the get-go one specific gender as your audience, and kind of leaving the other one out. So we have just a few examples here. On the left is a newer example. It came out in March 2013. It's called Powerful Yogurt. It's a Greek yogurt that's packed with protein and targeted specifically for men. It's something that it's kind of funny actually, because the packaging is very masculine in the sense that it says, size does matter in terms of the size of the cup of yogurt. Bigger packages matter, things like that. So trying to, with those aggressive taglines, trying to get males involved, especially younger males, and they've been pretty successful. So we have another example here, which is Old Spice. It's a little bit of a different strategy. So reinvigoration, rather than starting from the get-go with a brand new product targeted for a specific gender, they have targeted males in the past. So older men was their traditional audience. They were extremely well known, had a great brand equity. But recently, in the past 5 years, they reinvigorated their whole brand to target men ages 18 to 24. So you may have seen this man, this Old Spice man on a horse. He's been extremely popular, whether it's on TV commercials or on all the YouTube ads they have, on Twitter, social media. Even at key sporting events, they'll have this guy come and give out samples to guys in the locker room. It's been extremely successful. And even among women, actually, Todd mentioned his wife falling in love with the Old Spice man. So, it's really been attractive for everyone, but definitely among young males.
Liz, the interesting thing about that introduction too is, my son, who's 27, who was basically drawn into that brand because of the great ads that they ran, but they innovated around a younger product, but their use of digital marketing and multimedia in terms of how they connected with young males, I thought was very impressive. Actually, my office is across the street from Procter & Gamble. When the Old Spice guy was in the lobby of Procter & Gamble, the line for autographs for him apparently was just incredible, but he really connected.
That's great. So our next type of brand are those that are cross-gender, and what this means is a brand that traditionally has targeted one gender, but then decided, hey, I'm going to take advantage of the other 50% of the population and reach out to them. So this can be successful. And here we have two successful examples here and on the next page. So this first one is Dove. So Dove is well known for their audience of females and beauty care, skincare, well known for their campaign for real beauty for females. However, recently in the past year or two, they reached out to males using their same brand name. So they get to keep that brand equity of Dove, but went to Men Plus Care is what they're called now. So they have facial care for men ages 35 to 44, ideally is their target. So facial care like cleansers, shaving gels, post-shave balms, deodorant. And they also have some really great marketing, just like the Old Spice guy. A lot of it is sports related or celebrity athlete related. They had a huge campaign this past month or 2 months ago for the NCAA March Madness tournament, having celebrity coaches go on there and say, you know, if I had the decision between Dove and some random brand, I'd choose Dove. So they've been really successful in targeting men and at the same time not alienating their original consumer base, because sometimes that can happen. But women are still buying Dove, men are buying Dove. It's worked out for them. A second example, it's a little bit different. It's taking basically Cliff Bar, which is a well-known brand for protein bars, meal replacement bars. They decided, hey, women are buying our bars, but they, you know, again, they're 50% of the population. A lot of them are active and working out. Let's cater to them with something, you know, vitamins and nutrients specifically for a woman's body. And they came up with Luna bars. So Luna bars have been extremely successful. And even though they don't carry the same Cliff Bar brand name, they've become, you know, a huge brand on their own and a well-recognized name. So again, this targets time-strapped active females, and marketing is meant to emotionally connect with a woman and kind of say, okay, yeah, we have the manly Cliff Bars, but here's something just for you. So two more examples here of extension strategy number one, which is that idea of using your same brand name, but reaching out to the other half of the world. So Tide is a great example here. Traditionally targeted towards moms doing laundry for their kids. And that's what it's always been. Occasionally they might have said, like, you know, had a few examples or a few advertising schemes for males, like the doofus dad is a common ad they used to have. But now they're taking advantage of the fact that men actually do laundry at home and reaching out to them and saying, hey, here's something for you. We know you're doing laundry at home and we know that you're still manly when you do it. So some of these ads have been with Drew Brees, the quarterback for the Saints. And basically the idea is, I think, you know, he's as comfortable having a six-pack with the guys or out playing football as he is with having a tea party with his daughter. So he's a family man, he's doing the laundry, and he likes doing it. And then Velveeta Shells and Cheese is just another example where traditionally targeted at moms cooking dinner for their kids, always has been very successful. But what they realized was that young men were eating these shells and cheese, a lot of them were, and like, you know, in college or young professionals. And why aren't we taking advantage of that? Why aren't we, you know, letting them know that we know they exist and talking to them? So that's been extremely successful, talking to males ages 20 to 30. They have Velveeta cheesy skillet singles now, which is just like a single meal for a single guy. Their marketing campaign called Eat Like That Guy You Know. You've probably seen commercials for it. It's been extremely successful, and I would recommend clicking on this link after the presentation if you can. It's a funny commercial. You know, it's been aired on Comedy Central, ESPN, MTV, all these places where young males are going and they're going to see it. So with that said, there's just a few key watch outs for this cross-gender branding. If you have always targeted one gender and you're thinking about going to another one, just make sure that, you know, it's the right thing. It may not be the right strategy for you. One of the key watchouts that I have mentioned already is that you got to be careful not to alienate your existing consumer base. So, you know, don't get too crazy with the masculine branding like Dr. Pepper 10 did, let's say, but and not alienate that original female consumer base. Another watch out is that females actually usually have no problem with a brand that has traditionally been targeted towards males, and taking that on, whereas the opposite is not always the case. So if an item has traditionally towards females, and now is being targeted towards men, it's sometimes hard to get men to catch on to that and to welcome it, even though they know that it was originally for women. And finally, before you make the leap, just ask yourself, does my brand actually make sense for men? Yeah, it's easy to say, I'm going to go branch out to them, but does it make sense? And if not, innovation might be a better strategy for you. So coming up with a brand new Greek powerful yogurt that is just for men.
Liz, great job and great examples of how marketers have turned gender perspective into real action in a couple of interesting different ways. And we also came across a list of some sort of a laundry list of great questions that you should think about asking before you make a brand extension that might be gender specific. So, do I create a sub brand or a new brand name, or can it comfortably exist within my current own brand name? Think of Dove. Or, you know, what are the new product attributes that I need to adopt and communicate to appeal to the opposite sex? Or, you know, will the personality and values of my core product or brand translate successfully to a product position for the opposite sex? For example, how do I communicate simplicity, purity, and neutrality in a masculine way? And then another example, again, we're not going to go through all of them, but do I expect my product to attract new female consumers, or is it likely to cannibalize the consumers of my existing brand? So hopefully a laundry list for you brand marketers out there, or private brand marketers out there, to think about how you can get engaged and what are some of the watch outs and rules that you should follow for gender specific marketing.
So finally, so we've talked about brands that target, you know, one specific gender, brands that are cross-gender, they're targeting two, but in separate ways. What about those brands that are gender neutral? So in other words, they're unisex. Their audience is both females and males. They ideally have a product that satisfies both of their needs. So this is just a really interesting survey that we came across in our research. It's among millennials, so ages 14 to 34. And basically some of the results, they're shocking, they're compelling. So what we found is that almost 4 in 10 of the women in this survey preferred clothing that are made specifically for men. So fewer than half of men and women prefer to buy products that are gender specific. And a lot of the times they actually shy away from advertising that is towards one gender because they want to do the opposite. Another really interesting point was that nearly half of women and 4 out of 10 men said that they are cool with men wearing makeup. So some of these examples, Todd's laughing. So these examples are just not necessarily to say that all millennials are this way or that you absolutely need to have a gender neutral brand, but it's just to say, like, if you want to target millennials or if you're trying to get their attention, they may not think in the traditional way that we have always thought, and that being that you have to target males and females in a totally separate way. So it's just an eye-opener, something to think about. So this is just a quote from Meet on Marketing, and it's just to say that industry experts are on the same wavelength here. They're saying that, you know, retailers and brands who take advantage of the fact that men are shopping, they're in the store, they're buying your brands, those that realize that and take advantage of it like as soon as possible rather than later, are going to be winners in the long run.
And so, you know, we talked about the importance of convenience stores in men, and we've all seen the beer caves and the innovation we've seen in some formats for some walk-in coolers. But it hasn't stopped just there. There are retailers that have been active, and it's not just retailers, it's manufacturers really providing the ideas and the concepts. P&G's Men's Zone. Dwayne Reed has got a similar men's zone, small markets with Man Aisle and CVS for him units. So some interesting work trying to cater to and attract a male while they're in the store with a specific section of the store. And as we look at retail performance across the categories we track at Nielsen, we know there's an issue with a lot of center store categories. Volume's not moving the way that it should. So is there something we need to do to shake up the store to make it a more interactive, more pleasurable kind of experience? And I think these are some great examples of how some retailers and manufacturers are going after males.
Yep. So with all of that said, the point is that, yes, men are shopping more, and you got to keep your eyes out if you want to stay ahead of the curve and be successful. But always, keep in mind and remember that women do still prevail. They make up the majority of spending, 85% of all consumer purchases. Their earned income is growing, so they're not going away. And we've talked a lot about targeting men and reaching out to them. But if your brand's audience is currently female, don't forget to, still pay attention to them and don't become stagnant. So with all the change that's going on, it's important to be aware of that, but also keep in mind that women do, control the spending in our nation. So
women still rule. Okay. I'm okay with that. And I guess I could use a little makeup on broadcasts like this too. So key takeaways. So just a couple things to talk about in terms of what we've learned today, and then we'll open up for some questions. So as Liz talked about, as we demonstrate through this presentation, that women still dominate the store, but men obviously are more involved at multiple points in the path to purchase. So that's important to understand and how to plan and react around. Knowing where your category stands with males and females. I mean, we provided examples of the fact that there are some categories where males, surprisingly so, are a lot more involved than women. So, and also, are there opportunities for cross-gender or gender-specific branding? At the same time, be cautious not to alienate your existing audience, no matter which way you go, from male to female to female to male. And with less deal-prone shopping behavior, men present a real unique opportunity for premium price brands, for non-promoted items, especially those younger than 36. So again, an opportunity to connect with them, to drive some impulse buying, which is desperately needed in our stores to drive overall basket rank. And for many female shoppers, convenience is a nice to have. For men, it's a real must have. I think that really describes why men are so engaged in convenience stores. And finally, take best practices from what Liz shared with you in terms of how brands have embraced gender-specific or cross-gender marketing product innovation. And clearly it's worked. It's taken a brand like Old Spice that was near death and created just a star out of that brand and connected with a consumer group that I would think that many would have thought that they would never have been able to pull it off, but they did with innovation, with the right messaging and the right use of media and technology to connect with shoppers in a very interesting way. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Q&A. So Mike, I think you're going to lead this part.
Yes. Thank you, guys. It's great information and very nicely done. I wanted to pass along, we did get a few questions. Surprisingly, we didn't get a lot more questions with regard to the doofus dad, Liz. So I was disappointed in that. Wanted to, here's a question we got, and specific to digital marketing officers. Digital marketing offers. For example, those that are pushed through handheld devices. The question is, do women or men typically respond better to such offers?
Gosh, I know we just issued a digital report. I'm not sure what the differences are between men and women. I'm sure we might have that at our disposal. I just don't know the answer to it. But I know, we've done some other research to suggest that paper-based advertising, which dominates most of the advertising that takes place today, is still preferred by most. But the realities of the cost advantage of going digital make it incumbent upon manufacturers and retailers to figure that out and figure out ways that you can communicate digitally to men or women. to connect in some very interesting ways, because our competitive environment is getting tougher and tougher. Brick and mortar retailers are going to come under a lot of onslaught of competitive threat from e-commerce. E-commerce who are pretty good in terms of how they connect with shoppers and understand what they do and how they buy. And so being able to leverage technology in a very interesting ways with men and women is very important as well.
Great, great. Another question. This one has to do with, you guys talked a lot today about examples of retailer engagements that did a nice job of focusing on the male shopper. What about retailers who do a nice job with the female shopper?
Well, clearly the drug channels, their engagements with women, as you see in terms of, that's the one channel where men haven't seen an increase in share of spend. It's because the drug chains have figured out how to connect with women in terms of beauty care. Another retailer comes to mind, Target. Liz and I talked earlier. It's one of the few retailers that you hear the word love talked about, and it's mostly coming from women. Women, for whatever reason, love shopping at Target. As a guy, I don't get what you love about it, but I do take about a once a month shopping trip with my wife to Target, and I have to take great care to get out of there in a time frame that I would like to get out of that store compared to what she does. So they've connected very well, and I think Liz will agree with that. And this one other example, and it's basically some work that I did early last year around experiential retailing. Lululemon, an incredible retailer that sells apparel for exercise, primarily focused on women originally, but they sell men apparel too. When I walked in the store in my first visit, I was just floored by how 4 female associates were in the store dancing in the aisles, having a great time, enjoying themselves working. But when you talk to them, they really understood their product line. And my daughter actually graduated from college with a young lady who works at Lululemon. Actually, a couple of them did. And they go through a great care to train their employees to how they can be the most knowledgeable about what they do, but they also do it in a fun, exciting way. So I think you can find probably more examples of those, but those are 3 that really pop in my mind.
I would definitely agree with all of those, especially the Target. I love Target, as I told Todd. Sample size 1, of course, but we do know that women prefer Target over men. And I think part of that is because due to that exploration trip. So what we said or way earlier on in the presentation was that men may be more on a mission and to get in and out of there. Whereas women are more likely to shop around, to go through the aisles, to enjoy that experience. And Target's great at experiential retailing.
Great, thank you. I have another question here with regards to multicultural marketing. How should we think about multicultural marketing when it comes to gender?
Well, first, younger population tend to be more multicultural. Older population tend to be more traditional white population. I don't have the breaks by gender, but when you look at millennials, 56% of millennials are white, 73% of boomers are white. So, almost a 20-point differential there. 21% of millennials are Hispanic compared to 5% or compared to 10% of boomers who are Hispanic. So clearly you need to think about multicultural when you talk about how to connect with shoppers. And the younger they are, the more likely they're going to be multicultural.
Great. That's all the questions we have today. I want to thank you guys, not only for the great content, but for what I thought was a great presentation. I wanted to remind everyone in our audience that we've been recording today's presentation. It's available to you 24/7 on gmdcconnect.org on the archive tab, as are the 13 previous presentations as well. I also, while you're there, you can check out the schedule for upcoming video casts. With that, once again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Todd, Liz, thank you very much once again, and we appreciate you being with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks to the GMDC too.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.